Let's begin and daven that the fruit of our learning should help to bring home all the rest of the hostages, protect our soldiers and Am Yisrael, all of the innocents, and bring a speedy end to our wars. And be an Ilui Neshama for my mother, Shlomo Leah Bas, Menachem Mendel, Rachel.
Amen.
So last week we spent some time looking at some of the Gemara, as the Gemara is continuing to talk about cases of bulmus. So we read a Braita, which has a prescription for people who are afflicted with bulmus. Give them honey or any kind of sweet thing. And we looked at the pasuk in Shmuel Bet that seemed to indicate, or actually Shmuel Aleph, that seemed to indicate that such a thing might work. It was worked on Yonatan, but Yonatan wasn't technically struck with bulmus, although he was very hungry. But there's apparently a distinction. Then we saw from Abaye, bit bigger. Abaye said we didn't learn this. In other words, we didn't learn that giving somebody something sweet is going to revive them from bulmus, except for after they ate something. But before they ate something, then it whets their appetite, it spurs their appetite. Migra garir, right, from the word meaning to drag, but it like drags their appetite perhaps. And we brought a verse, a couple of verses also from later in Shmuel Aleph, where David's it all is here. That's unexpected. Where we learned in this place in Shmuel, where the town of Ziklag, where David had been living, had been attacked, and when all the men had been away, and all of the women and children had been taken hostage, and David, with the help of Hashem, starts to go to find all of the people who had been taken. And they find an Egyptian person out in the field who's also starving. And what do they feed him? So here, let's just look at this again. Welcome, Paul. We're just doing so where are you now?
I'm back home.
You're back home now?
Yes, we landed yesterday at 5 o'clock in the morning. It was very, very complicated because they canceled our flight.
Yes.
And we had a lot of trouble, a lot of trouble.
Oy.
Yeah. But we had something to rejoice in. We went there for the, הלכנו לשם בשביל אני לא יודע לדבר, בשביל הלידה של נכדה.
וואו.
Mazel tov.
As a בסדר.
She was born the very hour we got to Luxembourg. Just at the very hour. And we were there for 3 weeks. We intended to be there for 2 weeks and 2 days. But we had to add 5 more days because we didn't find a way to come back.
Oh my gosh.
Now we're here, but
wow.
the little girl. of the 3 weeks. She is our second
grandchild.
Second granddaughter. No,
Granddaughter.
Yeah, oh, the other ones are
boys.
Are boys, yes.
Okay. How many grandsons do you have?
So altogether 6.
Very nice. Came your boo.
I know there are people who have more, but we are very happy.
No, it's not a numbers game.
Of course, she is abroad. She is in Luxembourg. And that's the situation.
Yeah, I understand that. Two of my grandchildren are in New York, and the rest of them are in different places in Israel. So, but yeah, if I want to see my grandchildren in New York, I generally have to go to New York. So I understand. Okay, so anyway, we're talking about Abaye. So Abaye said that somebody who has been stricken by bullmoose, this idea of feeding them something sweet to bring back the light of their eyes, right? To revive them. This works after they've eaten, but before they've eaten, eating something sweet just makes them more makes them more hungry. It whets their appetite. And so, what's his proof? His proof is from this story where after again, David is now after he comes back, he finds his town of Tziklag has been overrun. This is at a point in David's life when Shaul is still alive, and Shaul has been pursuing him, and he's had to, stay away from Shaul. So he has this redoubt in the south in Tziklag, and he came back one day to find that he and his men had been out, and the town had been overrun. Women and children had been taken hostage. All of the women, all the children had been taken hostage, including David's 2 wives. And so they go off trying to find the people who did it, and they find an Ish Mitzri, find an Egyptian man, and they bring him to David. And so what do? Vayitnu lo lechem vayochal. They gave him bread, and he ate. So they give this Ish Mitzri bread, and he ate. Vayashku mayim, and they gave him water to drink. And then what? Vayitnu lo felach vrela u'shnei tzimukim vayochal. And then they gave him some dates and some raisins, and he ate. So those are very sweet. And he ate them, but tashav rucho elav. And then his spirit came back to him, which we will associate with this idea of having been revived from an extreme hunger, right? That he's regained himself. Because he had not eaten or drank for 3 days and 3 nights. So that's we looked at those psukim, and that's what we see. So what do you see? That the way he gets to Vatashav Ruchal is first they gave him lechem, which is either bread or just food generally. It could also be lechem. In other words, they first give him a meal, and then they gave him the piece of the devela, of the figs, and then the simukim, the raisins, and then he's revived. So this is to qualify what we said earlier. So if this is true, lo shanu eliyah. So then what would I say if somebody had, and again, even though the Gemara doesn't go out of its way to tell us this, but this is also not a proof for bulmus, because it doesn't say that the man had bulmus, but he had simply not eaten for 3 days, 3 nights. But nonetheless, Abaye says it's relevant. So how is it relevant? So what would you say if somebody has bulmus on Yom Kippur? What would you do to revive them?
Just give him lechem, whatever that means, and water, and then dessert.
Basically, yeah. So that's what we get. So this is a practical, it seems to be a practical piece of instruction from Abaye. And again, we're looking to psukim from Tanakh to tell us these things. It's not the only source, as we've seen. Sometimes there are sources, that there's an understanding that other, people knew of other kinds of treatments for various illnesses. But Chazal, when they can, they look toward Tanakh. And I think we mentioned this not last week, but another time. So the Gemara says elsewhere, like in the beginning of Baba Kama, that we don't learn halacha per se directly from Navi and Ketuvim, but we get definitions of terms. We can use Nach to get the definitions of terms. So we can look and see the way words are used, and understand them from their context there to help us understand words in the Torah. And I think this is along the same lines. It's not that we're learning halacha per se, but we're learning something practical from these psukim in Nach. And so wherever we can, we try to learn from Tanakh generally. Okay, so now we're up to this part, Amar Rabbi Nachman, Amar Shmuel. So Paul, you've been away. I'm going to let you start to read. Amar Rabbi Nachman. Paul?
I think he's asleep.
You want me to read?
Yeah.
Rabbi Nachman Amar Shmuel. מי שאחזו בולמוס מאכילים אותו
עלייה.
עלייה, עשה שמן מאוד טוב, עלייה בדבש, רב הונא ברי, ורב יהושע אמר, אף סולת נקייה בדבש. כך פאפה אמר, אפילו קמחי דשערי בדיבשה.
Okay. So we have so what's the first one? Rabbi Nachman says in the name of Shmuel. Yeah, go ahead.
People who have got bulmus, how do you say in English? Bulmus.
We're just saying bulmus. It's we mentioned a while ago that bulmus is
You are craving to eat or something like this. No?
It's a disease that makes you, ravenous. It makes you desirous of eating. It's the same root as the word bulimia, which is an eating-related disease, right? Or somebody needs to eat a lot.
Bulmus doesn't have to be in Hebrew. It doesn't have to be a disease. You can have a bulmus just at some time, because you see some cakes which you would in the בחלון של איזה מדען, got the bulmus.
But that's the thing. Here in the context of the Gemara, we understand that it was considered to be a very, a specific disease. So Lech Teda, but that's how Chazal saw it. So somebody's been stricken by bull moose. So what does it say?
Yes. You feed him בשר שמן מאוד.
Right, so you look here at Rashi. So what's the aliyah? I think I mentioned this before, but or maybe you know what's the aliyah?
I thought it was like the tail or part of the tail, if I remember.
It's the tail of a sheep. It's a sheep's tail, which is very fatty.
Tail of a sheep? This is something you eat?
Yeah, that's what they would do. But in other words, it's not oh, you know, I could. Well, I'm not going to do it now, but we learned this a long time ago when we were looking at different things about the Seder Hayom in the Beit HaMikdash. But the aliyah is a very fatty part of the animal, and that's what when Rashi says. So Rashi says aliyah basar shemein mod. He's not translating the word aliyah, but he's telling you that the aliyah, which is the tail of the sheep, is very fatty meat. So now what we're doing here in the Gemara is continuing along the lines of what we've been doing until now. So we're talking about what you do, how you feed somebody who has bull moose. So Rabbi Nachman, in the name of Shmuel, says you give him aliyah bidvash, give him this sheep's tail along with honey. And Rav Huna, go ahead.
Beria?
Rav Huna bere, which it means, right? Bere means anybody?
It's the son of.
The son of, right? It's bar is son, like bar mitzvah, right? Bar is son. And the A ending is the male possessive. It's instead of an O, instead of the O that you put at the end of a Hebrew word. So it'd be Rav Huna bino shel Rav Yehoshua, Bere.
He was the son of Rabbi Yehoshua?
Of Rav Yehoshua. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua.
Rav, they are later.
So Rav is what? Rav is an Amora. There's also Rabbi Yehoshua, who's a Tana of the Mishnah. But that's a different.
Rabbi is in Amora and Rav is in Tanai.
Lefer.
Okay.
Okay, so Rav is an Amora. So this is Rabbi Yehoshua. He was an Amora. And Rav Huna, his son, was also an Amora. So what was his prescription? He said, Afsolet Nikiya Bidvash.
Solet.
So Solet.
Small.
Yeah, Semolina in English.
Yes.
Yeah, Solet, what Solet means in Chazal is it's highly refined flour. It's flour that's been ground and had all of the bran has been removed. So we get this easily now, right? In the ancient world, Solet was something that was generally reserved for wealthier people who could afford to have this kind of flour that was highly refined.
Flour, you have to do something with the flour. You have to bread or cake or something.
So I don't know. So this is interesting, and I don't know. I didn't look into this, but you're right, because flour by itself is really, it's not completely inedible, but it's you don't really digest it, right? It's not really digestible.
Mm-hmm.
But so I don't know exactly what this means. So let Nikiya Bidvash, but that's what his prescription is. Give him fine flour with honey, and Rav Papa says,
אפילו קמחי דשערי ודיבשה. Flour.
So flour, this are, what would that be?
Shah. Support. What does that have to do?
Michael Warren, you want to say something?
I'm just going to take a guess based on context, but I don't know if that's something is.
Well, what's your guess?
Well, given that, given that the previous line talked about solet and saying that given that this saying you even, this would be either less refined flour, or I'd guess that it's even what's left over when what's been removed from the solet.
Asheriot.
No,
No?
no. But Michael, your basic assumption is correct that the afilu, right? So each of them is saying it starts with this part starts with Rav Nachum bar Shmuel. He says, "Give him al yabit vash." So that's like a very very fatty food, and it's something that would also be a kind of a delicacy. And then Rav Huna Bereida, Rav Yeshua says, "Af solat nikiya bidvash." You could also give him. In other words, maybe it's not as good as giving him al yabidvash, but you could give him refined flour with honey. And then
Something
Rav Papa,
you are downgrading your food.
right? And then so what Michael Werner said is true. So afila kimchi desare bedivsha must be something lesser. So this though, but see, Paul, I thought you would get it because you read this correctly as a sin. Desare, it's kemach saorim. It's barley flour. So barley flour is considered to be not even it. It's not that it's not fit for human consumption, but we know from elsewhere that barley flour was used for animal feed. Anything from barley was mainly used for animals. But he's saying you could even take flour of barley. You could take barley flour and mix that with. I'm assuming it's mixed together. You mix that with honey. So if I put all of these things you're eating something with honey, right? You're eating the aliyah with honey, or you're eating solid nikiya, and nikiya just means that it's super refined. It's completely clean of the bran, or you could even give him kimchi tasari. So we started off right from the Braita. The Braita said, "Ma'achilina to dvash v'chol minei metika." So based on the Braita, we would have thought you just straight away give somebody with bulmus, you give them something sweet. But then I understood from Abaye that lo shano el lachar achila. You cannot. It's going to be helpful to revive somebody after they've eaten food. So you have to first give them food. And now we say it seems like it's going along the lines of what Abaye was saying, that you have to give them something sweet with food, or it could even be together with the food. So you could give them al bidvash, you could give them solat nakiya bidvash, you could give them kemach saorim bidvash, right? Divsha would be dvash, right? It's just Aramaic for dvash. Divsha would be dvash. So these are also just more particular prescriptions of things you can give them, and as we said, then in this list, each one is considered to be not as good as the previous one, but it will still work. And now, this is okay. Well, we'll see how far we got. I was just about to paste in the next part of the Gemara, but let's not take time for that unless we get through this, which I think we will. But let's do this. So Michael Schwartz, Amar Rabbi Yochanan.
Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Hamachad Chazni Bulmus, Ratziti Lemizrecha Shel Ta'ana, Titani Rabbi Yosef, V'kaimti Be'etzmi Hachakma Tichei Ba'aliyah.
Ba'aleh.
Alea.
Okay, we'll see all this, but let's go back and read this a little more carefully. Pa'am achat.
Oh, so one time I was stricken with bulmus, and I wanted.
No, so it's
Oh,
the rats, not ratziti,
I
but
ran. I
the
ran after.
I ran.
And ran. I ran after Zarech, the shining of a fig tree, of a fig.
Well, mizracha.
Oh,
What's
east. Oh, east. I ran to the east of a fig. I
right?
ran to the east of a
A
fig.
fig tree. A fig tree. The Eina is
A
also the
fig.
name of the tree.
Okay, I ran to the east of a fig tree. Rabbi Yosef taught, and I held myself that wisdom uh, makes alive a rising aliyah. I'm not
No,
sure.
ba'alea.
The wisdom makes alive its owner.
Its owners. Okay, so we'll look at the pasuk in a second, but let's just understand what happened here. So I'm also just going to tweak your reading a little bit. Just a second. So what happened? Rabbi Yochanan said, one time I was struck by bull moose. So now we're going to have a series of stories, or well, series. We'll have a couple of stories of people, excuse me, different rabbanim who were struck by bull moose and what they did as a result. So Rabbi Yochanan says, one time I was struck by bull moose and I ran to the east of a fig tree. Did Tani Rabbi Yosef, as Rabbi Yosef taught us, right? Did Tani, that Rabbi Yosef taught, he taught from an earlier source, Kiyamti be'atzmi, hachachma tichayeh ba'aleh. Actually, this. And I fulfilled in myself this pasuk of hachachma tichayeh ba'aleh. So first, let's understand, why did Rabbi Yochanan run to the east of a fig tree? And what is that? How does this follow, if it does, from what we learned prior?
I mean, they're trying to figure out sort of what is required to get somebody's eyes to light up. And therefore they're trying to get the minimum that's needed to feed somebody, or the minimum that's needed if somebody is struck with boldness over Yom Kippur.
Yeah, except here with Rabbi Yochanan, it's not clear to me this is happening on Yom.
No, but I think that what they're after is the story is being told in order to get some new idea of a minimum that would be enough to make somebody's eyes light up.
I'm not sure why you press this idea of getting a minimum.
Well, because I think in this case, maybe it's saying that just simply being to the east of a fig tree was enough to revive him.
You might say that. I see what you're saying. You might say that. What I might also say that that's not enough.
I mean, also following from the next example, like he was perhaps revived by wisdom.
Well, no, but that's that. In other words, okay. Wait a second. Let's understand that. Ratztil mizracha shel teina ditani Rav Yosef v'kiyamti biatzmi achachma techayeh ba'aleh. That he went to the east of the fig tree. What it sounds like to me in context is he went to the east of the fig tree to get figs from that part of the tree. He wanted the figs that were growing on the east of the tree. we understand that he's going to have to eat them. He needs something sweet. And Rabbi Yochanan seems to be saying that uh, if I that if I get if I have bulmus and I need to revive myself and I need something sweet, so the best thing to do is if I can get figs that grew on the east side of the tree. And this is the hemshech. Somebody who wants to taste the taste of a fig should turn to the east. In other words, the east of the tree. Shenamar mimeged tvuot shamesh. So we have to look at these two psukim. So this is another kind of prescription. But why would he want dafka the figs from the east of the tree? So Michael Werner, here you can read Rashi. Mizracha shel te'ena.
שהשמש המכה שם מן הבוקר עד חצות היום, והשמש ממתק את הפרי. So the sun hits from the morning until noon, and the sun sweetens the fruit.
Okay, so what's special about the east side of the fig tree?
The sun the fruit will be ripe and sweet.
Right, because of the exposure of the sun on the east, it's going to be right, presumably ripe, and it will sweeten the fruit. So that, of course, raises a practical question. What might you ask? So, okay, so that's true that the sun, Rashi says that the sun hits it, from the morning, really from the first light until noon.
But the second half of the day, presumably, it would be hitting the west side.
Right. So why not? What difference does it make if it's from the east side or the west side? Either way, it's going to get hit by the sun for half of the day.
If it's near another tree, on one side or on the other, or to the north or to the south.
So actually, here the Rashash's comments on the Gemara are printed in the back, and but the Rashash was what I was told, and I believe this is true. The Rashash has a comment on every daf of Shas. He's not like an extensive commentator, but he sometimes makes very insightful comments. And he raises this. I was really bothered by this because, okay, it's all very well and good to say that the sun hits the tree for half the day, but it doesn't hit it for the other half of the day. So wait, I think I have it queued up. I'll show you what the Rashash says. Let me just change the screen. Where's the Rashash? Here. So Rashash says, Sheltein Pirish Rashi Shemesh Makav. Right, so it's the Rashi that we just read. And he says, Kuf Lamed V'Kasheli. It's a problem for me. The Im Kain, the Ma'arava Nami. He could also go to the west. The Makah Shemesh Sham Mechatzot Ad Harev. It hits the tree from noon until the evening. The two kashali. Further, it's hard for me. The droma adifat bay. I would say then the southern part of the tree would be preferable. Why? The shama shemesh makaberu bas shel yom. right? If it has a southern exposure, it gets sun on the southern side the whole day. And then he brings a proof of that idea from the Nachos. Ulai yesh lomar. He says maybe the answer is yesh lomar. Mibnei sharuchot aminashlot mishnei tzdadim elu kashim. It could be that the winds that blow from those two directions, from the south and from the west, maybe those are actually hard on the tree. In other words, it's true they get the sun, but they're also being battered by the wind. And for that, he brings a proof from a Gemara in Baba Basra. But in other words, it's not 100% clear, but it seems to me that you could also answer this. Go back to the previous page. It might be a simpler thing that it's just that the east side of the tree gets hit by the sun first, and so if it's that time of that means that on any given day, the sweetening process already started to take place earlier on the east side of the tree. So it's not really even in that regard. There's a chronology to it. But I didn't see anybody who said it, but that's what I might think. But the idea is that Rabbi Yochanan is saying that this is something that he understood, that you go to the east side of the tree. Just a second. One second. And I'm reading I screwed up the way I copied it. Hold on a second, because the Tani Rav Yosef, it doesn't make sense there. It's here. I apologize. Ooh. That's right. And the Tani Rav Yosef comes here. That what did Rav Yosef teach? Rav Yosef taught us from a Braita that somebody who wants to taste the taste of a fig should turn to the east. Shenemar umimeged uot shamesh. So first of all, let's look at this pasuk, Chochma techayeh ba'aleh. It's a pasuk from Kohelet. So of course, Kohelet deals a lot with issues of Chochma. What does it mean to be a Chacham? And what is wisdom? And so he has this pasuk. Michael Schwartz, why don't you read? Let me get this a little bit bigger. Pasuk Yudbet, Ki b'tzel ha'chochma.
Ki b'tzel ha'chachma, b'tzel ha'kasef, bitron da'at v'chachma techayeh ba'aleha.
Okay, this is Kohelet is difficult to understand. If we give it a straight translation, what's the literal translation?
When in the shade of wisdom, in the shade of kasef, kesef, silver, money, there's an advantage of the das of chachma, of wisdom. I don't know how to translate that.
Okay. Well, here. So if you know a little bit of Tamei Mikra, right? So this Tamei Mikra help you to parse the sentence. So we have ki v'tzel chachma, v'tzel hakasef. Those are two like stitches. In the shadow of wisdom is the shadow of money, the shadow of silver. The kasef, as opposed to kesef, I don't know if you're aware, when you have a word that has this formation of two letters that have a segol, like eretz or kesef, the first segol will become a kamat if it's at a major pause. There are two major pauses, or either an etnachta or a sof pasuk. Michael Werner, I feel like I'm losing you too. Do you know what an etnachta is? Okay. This is a grammatical point. This is it really is very important. If you're learning Tanakh anywhere in Tanakh, uh, even if you don't know how to lane, you should learn the basic Tamei Mikra because they're indicative of how to read the sentence. It's not just a nice tune. So here, we see. I'm going to teach you two today that are at least two today that are very important. So one of them is etnachta. Etnachta in modern Hebrew is used to mean a pause, right? It's from the word nach, right, to rest. But it's the Aramaic. So this little upside down, I don't know what you would
Chupchik.
the little, what's that?
Chupchik.
Chick?
No. Chupchik.
Oh, a little chupchik. Yeah, this little chupchik, but it's a very specific one, right? So it's a semicircle with a little line coming out from the middle on the top, maybe like an upside down fork that's missing its middle tine. I don't know, or a divining rod. It's really a divining rod. Know about that. In any event, the etnachtat indicates a pause. So it's a pause in the sentence. It's where you're supposed to pause. And almost every pasuk in Tanakh has an etnachta. Not every pasuk, but almost every pasuk. Only really short psukim don't have it. And here it has it and tells me that this is a pause. And one of the other ways it's indicated grammatically is that the segol of the kaf of kesef becomes a kamat. So instead of b'tel hakesef, it's hakasef. That's something that you don't have in modern Hebrew. You wouldn't do that if you're speaking or even and in writing anyway. People don't put in their vocalization, but it's a biblical grammar thing. It would be the same thing if the word came at the end of the sentence. And that's the sof pasuk. The sof pasuk is indicated by this single line in the word be'aleh, the little line that's underneath the lamed is indicating the sof pasuk. And of course, we also know it's a sof pasuk because it has two little dots here. But if you have a word, that's why sometimes, in psukim, sometimes you'll have the word eretz and sometimes you have the word aretz. So what's the difference? If you look, you'll see wherever it says aretz, it's because it's either a sof pasuk or it's at a net nachta. So this tells me altogether that these words here, this is the first part of the sentence, and the rest is the second part of the sentence. So that's one thing. This is just an important basic idea in terms of how to read psukim. The other ones that we have here b'tzel chochma. This is a mercha and a tipcha. The little curved line that's going to the left and the curved line that's pointing to the right, which kind of visually you understand that these are related. Betzel HaChochma. It tells me that Betzel HaChochma is a single phrase. And similarly, the Yitron Dat, this is a munach, uh, mapach katon. This is called a katon. Oops, sorry. So this is also a single phrase, Yitron Da'at. So it's telling me that the advantage of knowledge, Yitron Da'at, is a single phrase, HaChochma Tichayav Aleh. Wisdom will make its owners, Ba'aleha, right? Ba'alim Shel HaChochma, it keeps them alive. That's a lot of discussion just to get to that, but that's what Rabbi Yochanan is quoting through. That's what he's saying. Kiyamti be'atzmi, I fulfilled in myself by doing this. By when I had bulmus and I needed to get something sweet to eat, I went specifically to the east side of the tree, and I thereby fulfilled this pasuk in myself, that using my wisdom, it literally kept me alive. Because we have this idea that bulmus is a very dangerous disease and people can die if they're not treated. Okay? In terms of the first part of the pasuk, I'm going to leave that. But you could say that I'll just say quickly, Kibetzel Chochma Betzel Kesef. I could understand that to mean that if you're in the shade of wisdom, that you're also in the shade of money, meaning that if you have wisdom, you're in a better position to become wealthy, right? To increase your wealth. And the Yitron Dat, but then the second part of the pasuk, it's along the same lines, but saying, but really the advantage of wisdom, of knowledge, is that chachma techayev aleh. It's not just that you'll be wealthy; it will keep you alive. Being wise will keep you alive. Let's go back. So that's what we get from Rabbi Yochanan. But now the reason I say it's not clear here. What Michael Werner said earlier is this is true. All of this is in the context of what we're learning about bulmus, and what we're learning about bulmus is telling us that even on Yom Kippur, you treat somebody with bulmus. Now the Gemara is bringing advice regarding bulmus, so it'll be true whether it's Yom Kippur or not. In other words, if somebody has bulmus and it's not Yom Kippur, you also have to treat them. That's certainly true. The chiddush of our Mishnah about bulmus is that bulmus is considered something to be so dangerous that you feed somebody even on Yom Kippur. And now I'm understanding that there's, we have these medical traditions regarding bulmus, that maybe you have to eat something solid first and then you have something sweet, or maybe you have to eat something solid along with something sweet, like the aliyah or the solet or the kimchit desare. And Rabbi Yochanan now goes back to this idea of just eating a date, and he's saying that, look, if you're just eating a fig, he says, personally, this happened to me. One time I personally had bulmus, and I ran to the east of a fig tree, and I fulfilled in myself this pasuk, I thereby I fulfilled this because I knew, and I was so well informed, and I was smart enough and aware enough that the best thing for me to do would be to get an eastern fig, to get a fig that grew up in the east. And now he brings this proof from Rav Yosef. What did Rav Yosef say? So he said somebody who wants to taste the taste of a fig should turn to the east. Presumably, what does that mean, turn to the east? What does it mean here?
Go to the east side.
He goes to the east side, which is actually a more, he turns to the east side, Lim Mizracha, and it's just missing the word Teina, but it's implied that you're going to the east side of the fig tree. And his proof is from a pasuk in the Torah where it says, Umi meget tevuot shamesh. And that's another, here, this one I have queued up. Second. You should all be familiar, I mean, you should be familiar with all these psukim, but this one may be especially so. Well, Yosef Amar Mevorechet, right? Michael Schwartz, you can read. Pasuk Yud Gimel.
Uli Yosef Amar Mivorechet Hashem Artso V'miged Shemayim Mital Umitahom Rovetzet Tachat
Okay. Keep going.
Umimeged Tavuot Shemesh Mimeged Resh Yerachim Umerosh Harari Kedem Umimeged Gevuot Olam.
We'll read a little bit more. Keep going.
Umimeged Eretz Umeloa Ertzon Shokni Sne Tuvoto the Rosh Yosef Ulekad Kod Nazir Achiv.
Echav. Okay, so what parsha is this?
Hazino, no?
It's not Hazin.
Zota brachot.
Vizota bracha. Right, Vizota bracha. So this is the bracha that Moshe gave to Yosef before he died. And the reason, of course, I say that you might know this better than others is because on Simchas Torah you hear this like 100 times. And that's not even an exaggeration, depending on which minyan you're at. But you probably heard it at least every year. You probably heard it at least a dozen times. I could say with almost without a doubt. So what did he say to Yosef? To Yosef, he said, "Mevorechet Hashem artzo." His land is blessed by Hashem. Mi meged. Does anybody know what meged means?
Megadim, it's like delicacies associated with food.
Yafeh. Yeah, there also, I don't know if it still exists. There used to be a brand name in Israel of Meged for oil. There was an oil company, Meged. So it's, yes, it's like it indicates delicacies. Targum says, Yosef Amar Bevarcha min Kadam Hashem Ar'eh Avda Magdanin. His land, right, to Yosef he said, his land is blessed before Hashem. It makes Magdanin, it makes delicacies. Mitala Dishmaya, from the dew of the heavens. Umitahom Rovetzet Tachad, from the depths that are lying below. In other words, so the whole, his land is, is something that produces meged. And then it says, Umi meged tevuot shamesh. So here also we see that the word shemesh became shamesh when it's at an etnachta. You see the etnachta. So that's why it says shamesh instead of shemesh. That's and that's if the Baal Koreh makes a mistake and says Shemesh instead of Shamesh, that's not something that you're supposed to correct for, because it doesn't change the meaning of the word. It's just indicating to you where the word is in the sentence. So umimeged tfuot shamesh. So what does that mean then? Umimeged tfuot shamesh.
Delicacies of produce of the sun.
Yeah. And so what did Rav Yosef understand from that? To go back to our Gemara. So the bracha says that Yosef, this is Yosef's blessing, that he has mimeged tevuot shemesh. He has the delicacy, right, or the finer food from the produce, from the grains that were grown, that we would say that were grown in the sun. So the tevuot, which is understood here to be not referring just to tevuah, just to grain, but anything that grows in the sun. So what does it indicate? It indicates that the meged is the meged aspect, the fact that it becomes this finer food, is a direct result of its exposure to the sun. Rashi says, "Mimeged lashon ma'adanim," right? A language of delicacies, finer food. Okay. Once again, I'll just say about this. Once again, that you see from Rabbi Yochanan, and this, as I said, this introduces now the personal. Rabbi Yochanan is saying, "This happened to me," and you see the way Chazal thought that there was no, I would say there was not really a differentiation for these Rabbanim in terms of practical knowledge, right, between things that they might have learned the way you and I might think that you learn using a scientific approach, and there's no difference between that and learning based on psukim. Now, the first pasuk that Rabbi Yochanan quotes, or the pasuk that he quotes, he didn't learn that you go to the Mizrach of the Ta'inah from that pasuk, but he's just saying, I was wise enough to know this, and therefore I fulfilled in myself this pasuk, that wisdom is something that will keep its masters alive. If you're smart enough, you'll know what to do. So he had bulmus, he needed to have something sweet. He was apparently not far from a fig tree, and he knew that the best figs for him to get are going to be from the east of the tree. And how did he know that? Because Rav Yosef darshaned that idea from this pasuk of Mimeged Tevuot Shamesh, that the meged, the finer fruits, or the finer delicacies, are going to come as a result of the sun having affected the growing of the fruits. So that's what we get from that. And see, okay, this is what I think. I think we'll stop here because I didn't paste in the next part, but I will I'll paste it in for next time. I'll read to you a little bit further and you'll see where this is going. We have some really fascinating stories now. So beginning with Rabbi Yochanan, the story we just read, it wasn't really a story, just he recounts this experience. But then we have actual stories that come up along the same lines. And so the next story is Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. I'm good. One second, I want to see if you can see that. Okay, this is our Gemara here. It's just straight from the text as it appears. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi havu ka'azli ba'orcha. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, if you pay attention now, when I ask you to read next week, you'll know all the words. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi havu ka'azli ba'orcha. Right? They were going on the way. Achazei bulmus Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda was struck with bulmus. Kapache leroeh. He was mekapeach aroeh. Here, this word kipeach, in this sense, means that he overtook the roeh. We'll talk about the word tafach and kipeach next week, but it means he overtook a roeh. What's a roeh?
A shepherd.
A shepherd. Right. So in other words, he was traveling with Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi were traveling, and Rabbi Yehuda became overcome with bulmus. So he overtook this shepherd. Achalei l'rifta. He ate. He ate his bread. Rifta's bread. In other words, he was so overcome with hunger, he took this bread from the shepherd. Amarle Rabbi Yossi said to him, Kapachta et roeh, you overtook this shepherd. Ki matu lamata, when they reached the city, matu reached, they got to the city. Achazei bulmus to Rabbi Yossi. Then Rabbi Yossi got bulmus when they got to the city. Adruhu belage v'tzai. They surrounded him with lage, would be like bottles of things to drink. V'tzai would be trays of food. In other words, they surrounded him with food and drink. Amarle Rabbi Yehuda said to him, Ani kipachti et haroeh, v'ata kipachti et ha'ir kula. I overtook this shepherd, and you overtook this whole city. Yes, so there's a little bit of a humor in there, which we'll talk about more next time. But that's a story about bulmus, but now it's a little more expansive, right? Because we have more circumstance. And then after that, the Gemara brings another, which is not about bulmus, but it's about Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi when they were traveling, and this time they were traveling with Rabbi Meir. And it says vitu, vishuv, meaning, and again, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, Azi ba'orcha, they were going along the way. They were traveling, in other words. Rabbi Meir, havadayik bishma. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, lo havadaiki bishma. So Rabbi Meir was particular about a name. We'll see what that means in a second. And Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi were not particular about a name. This is just a general description about Rabbi Meir, that we'll see what it means is that he would judge people based on their name. He would use that as a kind of a way of figuring out if this is a good person or a bad person. If it's somebody he hadn't met before, he asks their name, and based on that, he makes a judgment call. Kimatu lahahu duchta bal ushpiza. When they came to that place, they needed a place to stay. Yahavu lahu. They gave to him. They gave to them. Right. So people told them like where to go. Amru lo mashmach mashimcha. They said to him. They said to the place that they were staying, the innkeeper, "What's your name?" Amar lahu Kidor. My name is Kidor. Amar Shma mina Adam Rashahu. Shinamar Kidor Tapuchot Hema. So the Amar here, he said, this is referring to Rabbi Meir, right? Because we said Rabbi Meir was somebody who was very particular about people's names. So he heard this name Kidor, and he said, I learned from this that he is an evil person, because there's a pasuk where the name, as it were, appears Kidor, but it uses two words, Kidor, because it's literally a generation of overturning, right? Top quote. It's said in a bad light. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi ashlimu lekisayu. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, in this context, ashlimu means that they gave their purse. They gave their purses to the innkeeper for safekeeping. And Rashi says, and it makes sense in this context, that they got there and they had to find a place because it was Erev Shabbat. They needed to be, somewhere for Shabbat. So they got to this place and they give their purses over to the innkeeper. Rabbi Meir lo ashlim lekiseh. But Rabbi Meir didn't give over his purse. Azal otve be kivrei diavua. And so he went and he placed his purse at the site of the kever, the grave of his father. His meaning the father of the innkeeper, because of course they're on the way. It's not Rabbi Meir's father. He places his keys there. And then I'm adding in some of the details that are not clear here, but he appeared to him in a dream. That is, the father of the innkeeper appeared to the innkeeper in a dream. Tashakil kisa de manacha resha dahahu gavra. And he saw, in the dream, he saw that his father is taking a purse that had been placed at the head of that person, of the father himself. So the innkeeper saw in a dream that there's a purse that's being hidden at his father's grave. L'machar amar lahu. The next day he said to them, the innkeeper said to Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda, this is what I saw in my dream. He tells them the dream. My father went and took a purse of money from his grave. Amri le, they said to him, a dream that happens in the Beishamshe is a reference to the night of Shabbat. Talk about that next time. Late Behuma Masha. It doesn't have any real substance. In other words, they waved him away from that, thinking the dream was something real. Azal Rebbe Meir, but Rebbe Meir heard this, and he went v'natre kule Yoma v'aite. He guarded it the whole day, and then he brought it back. In other words, he went for all of Shabbat. He sat next to his purse, and then after Shabbos, he brought it back. L'machar amrulo, to the next day, they said to him, Havlan kisan. So the next day, meaning after Shabbos, so Rabbi Meir got his keys, right? Because he kept it the whole time in the Beit Kvarot. But Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi tell this guy, okay, now it's Shabbos is over, give us our purses. Marlahu, he said to them, Lo hayu dvarim me'olam. It never happened. I don't know what you, right? Literally, right? These things never existed. I never took your purses. I don't know what you're talking about. Marlahu Rabbi Meir said to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, Amai lo daikitu bishma. Why weren't you particular about his name? Amrule, Amai lo amart lan mar. Why didn't Mar, meaning, why didn't your honor tell us? You should have told us. Marlahu Emar Damri Ana Chashasha. He says, okay, I say that you have to be. I say it as a chashash, as a fear, chuzuki miyamri. But to say it's absolutely true that I would judge somebody based on their name, would I say that? Would that be said? In any event, we'll talk about all this next time. Mashchuhu va'iluhu lechanuta. So they took so Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, they bring the innkeeper to Chanuta. The Chanuta, of course, is Chanut. It's a store, but in the context we understand is that it's a place where they sell wine, and they start to get him to drink. And they saw that he had some lentils on his mustache. So then they went and they gave a sign to his wife. In other words, they gave a sign to the wife that Rashi fleshes this out a little bit more, meaning that now that they knew that he ate lentils, they went to the wife and they said, "Oh, we were just with your husband, and I know that, you served him lentils. I know that you served lentils today, and your husband said that you should give us our purses." So then she gets there. She doesn't know any better. She thought they must be telling the truth because it's true. They must have been with my husband because my husband ate lentils today. And so she takes their purses, and she gives them to them. So then the innkeeper, when he finds out, he goes and he kills his wife, which is nice. He was not a very pleasant person. Hainu ditnan, it should be ditanya, that as we learn in a Braita, Mayim Rishonim echilo basar chazir. I'm going to give you a very rough translation of this because we have to. It's almost in code, but the words mean that after Mayim Rishonim is when you do Natilat Yadayim for bread. He fed him the meat of a pig. Mayim Achronim hargo et nefesh, and for the Mayim Achronim, that he killed somebody. That's actually the end of that story, and then there's another shorter story after that. I don't think we're going to get through all of that next time, but if we can, I want to go through these two stories next time, and we'll discuss it. So the first story that we'll do next time is about Bulmus, the story of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, who each are seized by Bulmus when they're going along the way, and what the implications of that were. And the second one isn't really about Bulmus, but it's about the same people, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi, along with Rabbi Meir, and what happened one time when they were traveling. So that's an introduction to next week's class. And in the meantime, we wish everybody a good week. Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.